Hey. No, I'll take that. I ain't tripping. Hey, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to the next session of Reading with Shilo, man. Shilo, what's up? How y'all doing? We are here to finish off the last 3 chapters of The Art of Conversation by Mr. Stephen Hawks. Or Stephen Hawks. The last 3 chapters, chapter 9, 10, and 11. Chapter 9, Appearance Matters for First Impressions. Chapter 10, Ending the Conversation, and chapter 11, the summary. We are on the last chapters. Whew. So buckle up so we can dive into the last 3 chapters and see what Mr. Huntz is talking about, man. Is there something that we can learn and grow from in Mr. Hunt's book on the art of communication? Appearance matters for first impressions, chapter 9. Looking sharp can be just as important and have an edgy wit when it comes to being a successful conversation. When someone is aware of their appearance, they are able to manipulate it to their favor and present a calm, cool, and collective persona that to others. Part of presenting this image, though, is believing in oneself and having the confidence to dress like an executive or as appropriate for the situation. Clothes play a large role in communicating, and people can use them to show what mood they're in and even what mood they'd like to be in. Along with what someone wears, the way they act in those clothes or body language is important as well. People's posture and nonverbal cues can mean more to others than their words. So it is critical that they make sure the messages match. Before initiating a conversation, let me see. Yep. Before initiating a conversation, a person should be sure that they are prepared with all the right tools to make sure it is a successful conversation. Tools such as listening, being open, and resisting the urge to judge others who are different can all make a huge impact on the success of a conversation or social interaction. This chapter looks at how appearance is interpreted by others and how a person can manipulate their wardrobe to present the right tone and message. We discuss, how people can become more comfortable with their natural appearance and translate that confidence into their wardrobe. We discussed the importance of body language and why people must ensure their nonverbal communication matches their verbal communication. Appearance can be everything. Appearance can be everything. Appearance, as discussed in chapter 4, can carry the bulk of the weight in first impressions. People are usually able to determine someone's personality just by observing their appearance, how they dress, their posture, their facial expressions, etc. This is why people should always be aware of how they are presenting themselves to others and be sure the person they are showing is the person they want others to see. Posture can be a marker of confidence, self-esteem, and respect. Standing straight and letting the shoulder muscles relax goes a long way to show others that someone is comfortable in their own skin. It is a more inviting position than haunching over, which can signal being closed off to others. To match a relaxed posture, a person should make sure their face is relaxed as well. A calm face or smile invites others to approach someone without feeling intimidated and often leads to impromptu interactions. All these factors culminate in an expression, and people can typically gauge someone's level of extroversion, conscientiousness, and openness in this way. Not all people are confident in their appearance, though, which others may not notice unless the person takes steps to start valuing the way they look. The first step is to refuse to conform to mainstream standards. There are a plethora of industries today that thrive on making people think they need certain products to look acceptable. Other industries focus on making people believe they need to be certain shape to look acceptable. Appearance is a person by person standard, though. Someone can find peace with their own appearance if they learn to accept who they are and value their differences. The next step is remembering that it's okay to not look perfect all the time. Working to keep a perfectly primped appearance at all times can be exhausting. People should allow themselves time to be comfortable in their own skin, working to gain approval from others. Excuse me, in their own skin without working. That makes a lot more sense. Without working to gain approval from others. Smiling can help people feel better about their appearance because it can tell someone's brain to be happy. And it is more difficult to criticize things that make you happy. The clothes a person chooses to wear shows what mood they're in and can even affect their disposition during the day. When someone gets dressed in the morning, their goal is most likely to be comfortable, which means they will probably pick clothes that match their mood. If someone is feeling nervous, they may choose bigger clothes that they feel hide them from the world. If someone is feeling happy, they might pick bright clothes and patterns to stand out in the crowd. This means the way they look will reflect their mood and convey that to others. If someone were to reverse this process, however, they could potentially change the mood based on the clothes they chose to wear. Dressing to promote the mood a person wants and needs for a specific function is another way to use appearance to their advantage. For a work function, you might want to pick out an outfit that makes you feel powerful and confident. A business suit is a classical choice to feel powerful at work, whether it is a traditional suit, an, oust, an astounding pantsuit, or a simple skirt or blazer. Getting dressed up to go to the office can make someone feel more confident and in control than if their wardrobe blends in with those of their coworkers. If someone is going on a first date, they might take a different approach by wearing something that makes them feel comfortable and at ease, but still presentable. The key to dressing for the date is to feel confident and allow your personality to shine through. Because people are able to evaluate confidence levels based on the way someone is dressed. It is especially important to have some clothes that demonstrate exceptional confidence. Clothes that are tailored to fit just right can make someone feel more attractive and thus more confident. They show others that the person cares enough about making a good impression to make sure their clothes fit perfectly. Along with appearance, body language shows others how someone is feeling or what they are thinking through nonverbal cues. People read body language, people read body language much in the same way they interpret appearance, and it can have an impact on their first impression of a person. Most people trust nonverbal communication, body language, more than verbal communication, which is speaking. For this reason, it can be helpful for people to be aware of their body language so that they are not presenting the wrong message to others. Boy, is that right. Boy, is that right. If someone struggles with social anxiety, their default body language may be to close off from others and keep to themselves. Even if that person desires interaction with others, their body language signals that they do not want to be spoken to. So most people may step away from them. To encourage people to approach them, the person should practice focusing on keeping an open posture and making eye contact with people as they pass. This allows you to engage others without having to speak and to let them know that if they would like to talk to you, you are open to a conversation. Because people typically trust body language over words, if someone is lying or masking the truth, their body language will most likely betray their statements. This can be tricky when someone is conflicted about an issue but does not necessarily want to discuss it with anyone else. If a person asks how they are and they respond with fine or okay, but their body language is visibly distressed, that person will likely insist something is wrong. If someone is troubled about something but does not want to discuss it, they should focus on changing their verbal messages, not their body language. But nonverbal communication often happens without people noticing. It can be more difficult to regulate. When someone asks about a sensitive topic, a person could simply respond, "Yes, I'm dealing with a personal issue right now, but I'm not ready to discuss it. Thank you for asking, though." This indicates that the nonverbal cues they noticed are not incorrect, but that the topic is not up for discussion. Playing it smart. Playing it smart. With all the techniques that have been discussed so far, it is clear that conversations take certain mental skills to master. A person can keep their wits sharp and always feel prepared for any interaction if they simply remember the keys to a successful conversation. The first major part of any conversation, as we have already discussed, is listening. If a person is not the speaker, they should focus on understanding the information that is being presented to them so they can then take a moment to process it and answer intelligently. The next step is for a person to be open and express themselves honestly. By presenting a truthful version of themselves, people encourage others to do the same and form a connection. In line with remaining open minded, people should remember not to judge others for their differences. Not everyone shares the same ideas or opinions, and that's okay. Judging someone for their beliefs is a sure way to end a conversation and should be avoided. It depends. Because, you know, if they're saying your appearance, is something, then your appearance is a conversation starter. You might not like the conversation that starts. Most conversations meander down the path forged by serendipity. This is because skilled conversationalists often build off the other person's comments to bring the discussion down new roads and to new topics. It's a simple way to develop an interaction with simultaneously getting to know the other person. Building on topics can sometimes require a little prior knowledge, though, so keeping up with current events and trends can be a wise investment of your time. Some people store away fun facts and interesting articles to discuss with others when the conversation seems to be stalling. In the event that conversation does not start to turn bad, a person should have a plan for how to reignite the excitement in the interaction. Offering a change of venue or introducing a completely new discussion are two ways someone can regain control of a stalling conversation. Sometimes, though, it is just time for silence. Being able to embrace silence in a conversation can feel awkward at first, but it is a good way to demonstrate comfort around the other person. There are a variety of reasons that can lead to silence in the conversation, and someone asking a question the other person does not want to answer is one of them. If someone finds themselves in this situation, There are a few things they can do to evade answering. The first thing, which may be the most important, is to make sure they understand the question. They can ask the person to restate or rephrase the question if they think they may be misinterpreting them. If it doesn't help, they can ask questions about the parts of the question they are uncomfortable with to gain some clarity about why the person is asking this. Once a person is confident they understand the question, they should take some time to think about their answer and whether or not they will give one. Not all questions need to be answered, or typically, if it makes someone uncomfortable, people will understand if they choose not to respond. If someone is only uncomfortable with part of the question, then they can simply choose to focus on the part they are comfortable with. Answering only part of the question might feel awkward for the speaker, but it is usually sufficient for the asker and can show the person is ready to move on from the topic. Sometimes the source of discomfort in the conversation can be a difficult or difference between the two parties. This does not always have to end the interaction, though. If a person if a person knows how to handle the situation, two keys to resolve the conflict in conversation is to stay. My bad. This does not always have to end the interaction, though. If a person knows how to handle the situation. Two keys to resolving a conflict in conversation is to stay open minded and not to worry about what the other person thinks. Sometimes a person can get so wrapped up in the belief that someone else is angry with that, and it drives their interaction and it drives their reactions, even if this is not necessarily true. Another useful tactic is to focus on listening to the other person and not speaking. When people dominate a conversation, they do not give the other person a chance to defend or explain themselves. When a person does get a chance to speak, they should be direct and not beat around the bush to get to their point. This can help someone understand what they are feeling and minimize the time spent in conflict. Finally, the person should always aim to find a positive resolution and end to the conversation. With all the skills discussed in this chapter, you have the ability to lead a successful conversation, but you will still need courage to start. If starting a conversation seems too scary or difficult, you can break it down into sections and to make it a little easier. Instead of focusing on how to make it through an entire conversation, you can focus on just one section at a time, such as introducing yourself, breaking the ice, or asking questions. It can be easier to face the fear of initiating interaction if you are in an environment that is familiar and safe. Being somewhere you are used to can make you much more comfortable and reduce the anxiety of being in a new place, in addition to speaking with new people. When you are new to starting conversations, it can be easier to practice with acquaintances first rather than perfect strangers. Some may find it easier to strike up small talk with their regular barista at the coffee shop than with whoever might be in line behind them that day. You should keep in mind that starting to practice conversations will probably feel challenging at first, but the feeling of accomplishment will be worth it in the end. Letting anxiety take control of whether or not you interact with others can be a recipe for isolation. Having the courage to having the courage to take charge of anxiety can be scary, but knowing a few tactics to overcome the initial discomfort can make the process easier for you. It is important to acknowledge that the task will be challenging. Some people may get discouraged because interacting with others is more difficult for them than it is for others. But if they simply accept that conversations will be a challenge, they can be easier to embrace. That was chapter 9. Appearance matters for first impressions. Chapter 10. Ending the conversation. Saving the best for last. A true conversation master needs to be capable of ending a conversation. It can be tricky. People need to be able to discern the signs that a conversation is winding down. This can often be determined by how long the conversation has lasted, as most people have an expectation of how long interactions will last before they engage with another person. Looking at the other person's body language can tip someone off that their partner is ready to part ways. If someone is yawning, touching their face, and no longer making eye contact, they are probably ready to cut ties. People need to have an exit strategy prepared for when they pick up on the subtle clues or subtle cues and they are ready to move on. Letting someone know why the conversation needs to end is one way to wrap things up, as long as it is a legitimate reason. When someone is stuck in a never ending conversation with a talkative person, they can introduce that person to someone new as a way to leave the conversation without offending the person. Ooh, send them off to somebody else. Hot potato. Your whole list. Whole list. Speak to the head. Ooh, that boy talk yet. I hope you're ready. I hope you're ready. That boy can talk. When someone is stuck in a never-ending conversation with a talkative person, they can introduce that person to someone new as a way to leave the conversation without offending the person. The key to ending conversations is to be direct without seeming rude. Sometimes a conversational partner may not notice the signs that someone is ready to end the discussion, which might prompt the other person to let them know verbally. It is important to never interrupt someone in an attempt to end the conversation because it can come across as rude. Once a person is able to establish the end of the conversation, they should politely excuse themselves before leaving. This gives them an opportunity to clarify why they must leave and shows the courtesy to the other person. This chapter examines the nonverbal cues that signal the end of a conversation and how people can be aware of them in their own interactions. It provides a few exit strategies so that a person can be prepared to leave a conversation if they get stuck in a lengthy discussion. Here is a section about how to politely end conversations and different ways to excuse yourself while making a lasting final impression on someone. Be aware. Conversations can be a great way to interact with others, but they are one of those things that is usually enjoyed best in small doses, especially if someone has social anxiety. It can be difficult to tell, though, when a conversation is winding down or when another person is ready to call it quits. Although most people won't come right out and say, okay, I'm done. There are more subtle clues a person can look out for to determine if their conversation needs to wrap up soon. Some people have a very general expectation of how long a conversation should last based on the environment and the topic. For example, most people expect small talk to be brief, with only a few exchanges. In the break room, people typically exchange a hello or how is your day going, and then move back to their respective areas. In more intimate settings, such as someone's dinner party, people can expect conversations to last a little longer because they are in a setting conductive or conducive to getting to know someone. Excuse me, conductive. It is conducive. Average conversations last about 30 minutes. Anything over this, and people might, especially when speaking to someone they don't know well. People can find lengthy conversations awkward and uninteresting after a time. Despite this common time frame, people are rarely on the same page with one another as far as how long any given conversation should be. In fact, It could be argued that most of the conversation is two people trying to figure out when to end it. So, if a person ever feels self-conscious about knowing how too far how too far to take an interaction, they can remember the other person likely feels the same way. Another simple way to notice if someone is ready to end the conversation is to look at their body language while they listen. When someone is ready for a conversation to be over, they often start closing off by crossing their arms and angling themselves away from the speaker. They might start to lose focus on the topic and begin looking at their watch or the door frequently. This usually signals the person has another appointment they need to go to, but they don't want to be rude and simply walk away from the other person. Yawning is also another sign that someone is losing interest, although most people will attempt to hide a yawn. Noticing the tired facial expressions that can come with it can be a helpful way to see someone is no longer interested in interacting. A final signal that a person is ready for to part ways is when they are no longer contributing to the conversation. They may be answering in short sentences or with one word responses. This shows they do not wish to elaborate on the topic further, and it is a good time for the speaker to allow them to exit. When a person realizes it might be time to end a conversation, there are a few different tactics they can employ to do so gracefully. The important thing to remember is to always be respectful of the speaker and be as polite as possible. No one likes to be cut off or abruptly abandoned when expressing their ideas, so being courteous when ending a conversation can go a long way to showing the other person that even though someone has to leave, they still value their time and opinions. When a person is ready to make their exit, they should always give a legitimate reason as to why they need to leave the conversation. This shows the other person that having to that having that this shows the other person that having to abandon them is regretful but necessary. The reason should always be legitimate because if one is made up, the odds are that the other person will see through the lie and take offense to someone lying to end the conversation with them. A second way to exit a conversation is to use the surroundings as a sort of a buffer. For example, if someone is at a party, they can tell the other person that they would like to go say hello to the host or circulate for a while to meet new people. They can even offer to come back and finish the conversation later in the evening. This is a respectful way to gracefully pull away from someone without making them feel like someone is bailing on the interaction. Using the surroundings can mean using people who are nearby. This tactic works at parties because they are great places to meet new people and make introductions. If a person is stuck in a conversation, they are ready to leave. They can introduce the speaker to someone else and pass off the conversation to that person. This way, the person who wants to get away is able to leave, and the person who wants to continue talking still has an audience to interact with. A person can assume a preemptive approach and lay the groundwork for having to leave before it is time to go. Letting someone know that a person will have to leave at a certain time or within a certain time frame gives them an opportunity to prepare themselves for an exit, however abrupt it might be. It makes them aware of the time limit, which may result in them helping the person be aware of their self-inflicted restraints and end the conversation on their own. All these tactics can be difficult to implement, however, if a person is too concerned about following social protocol. Some situations may seem as if there are no polite way out, but with the techniques mentioned above, it can still be simple to exit a conversation. The important thing to remember is that if one person wants out, it's likely the other person does too. So people should not feel guilty for wanting to leave a conversation early, even if they started, because all things must come to an end. whether everyone agrees or not. There are always outliers to their equations, though. Luckily, there are ways to handle them. Some people love to talk with others and might not notice nonverbal cues that their conversation partner wants to end the conversation. This is not uncommon with people who are discussing something they have a deep interest in or a passion for, or someone who might have a social communication disorder and has trouble interpreting body language and other cues. Just like with other people, it is important to always be respectful and polite in these situations and leave the conversation tactfully so as to leave a positive impression on the other person. People may all interact differently, but at their core, they all have the same basic social needs, and those should always be treated respectfully. Shalom, shalom. The first step in handling people who are not responding to nonverbal cues is to ensure a person's words match their body language. Similar to what was discussed earlier in this book, people can sometimes become confused when a person's verbal message does not match their body language or other nonverbal communication. If a person seems to not be noticing closed off body language or a lack of eye contact, then a person needs to move to polite but direct verbal messages, implying that you'd like to further your knowledge of the subject on your own, saying as such. That's a great point. I love to research and some can signal that you are ready to part ways. Someone can even encourage the other person to send them more information, making it clear they prefer to continue the conversation via a different medium. Interrupting someone to end the conversation is never an advisable way to leave a conversation. All people want to be heard, and if someone has been listening to them for a while already, it can particularly disres- it can particularly disrespectful. I think it's supposed to be B. It can particularly disrespectful to interrupt. Be disrespectful. It should be a B there. Be disrespectful to interrupt someone and then leave. Silence is a much better tool with which to show others you are no longer willing to participate in the conversation. A person can wait silently while another person finishes their expressing their ideas. Oftentimes, the speaker will notice the listener has stopped providing feedback and take this as a sign that they are ready to stop the conversation. Silence can be a much more productive and respectful way to signal the end of an interaction. If someone feels particularly inclined to interrupt the person, then they should consider interrupting themselves as a way to end the conversation. Excuse me. It might seem unorthodox, but interrupting yourself is a great way to quickly exit a conversation without hurting the other person's feelings. In the middle of a comment, they can simply look at their watch or at a clock and then say that they just realized the time and will be late for another commitment. This way, the urgency of leaving is established and legitimate, and the person does not have to feel rude about interrupting someone else's speaking time. Making your exit. Almost done. Making your exit. After explaining why you need to leave the conversation, you still have one more step before you can actually exit. You need to make sure the last thing you do is politely excuse yourself from the person or situation to make the lasting positive impression. It can be easy to give a reason and then leave the room, but taking the time to excuse yourself shows respect and courtesy beyond what might be expected. The first step of this process is to restate the reason for leaving. This reinforces that leaving is not necessarily by. You can end by inviting the person to continue the conversation at a later date or through another medium to show you're still interested in the topic at hand. Another way to make a graceful exit is to summarize the main points of the conversation before leaving the room. This reinforces that you were paying attention to the speaker for the duration of the conversation and valued the information enough to commit it to memory. Being able to summarize the interaction shows you are able to quickly process information and think on your feet. Finally, you should always thank the other person for the interaction. It may seem superfluous. Let's see what it is, superfluous. And if I'm even saying it right. Superfluous, S-U-P-E-R. Ooh, my knee. SUPERFLUOUS. Let me write it down. Before I look, S-U. SUPERFLUOUS. Superflu. What other word has that? I'm trying to think. Let's see what it means. Superstar, supersonic, superpower. Superfluous. Saying it correctly. Superfluous, adjective. Being more than is needed, not needed, unnecessary. It may seem unnecessary after inviting further conversation or restating why it is important for you or for someone to step out. Being more than is needed. It may seem to be more than is needed after inviting further conversation or restating why it is important for someone to step out. It may seem superfluous after inviting further conversation or restating why it is important for someone to step out. But making a person feel like their time is valued and appreciated can make a memorable impression on them. At first, excusing yourself may seem awkward. It can be difficult to find the right time and the right words for someone to tactfully excuse themselves from a conversation. The important thing to remember in this situation is that the odds are the other person was ready to end the conversation. Let this thought be the comforting one as the exit is made. You should not feel bad or guilty about leaving a conversation when the time comes. You should not show any discomfort by looking back behind yourself as you leave or asking if it was okay that you exited. Being confident in your exit is just as important as doing it politely. There are ways to alleviate the awkwardness that might come with making an exit. If the parting happens at work, someone could offer to make plans with the other person to continue the conversation later, maybe at another venue. This establishes that someone doesn't necessarily want to end the discussion, but has to leave for other reasons. To do this, sometimes a person will have to take charge of the situation. Taking control is not a bad thing if the person does it tactfully, as discussed earlier in this chapter. Wait for the other person to finish speaking, then firmly state that there is a reason the conversation needs to end. The key to this is not to leave wiggle room for a person to manipulate the information and thus draw their own conversation thus thus draw out the conversation even longer. After leaving the conversation, it is not uncommon for you to begin worrying about whether or not you made a good impression. You may start replaying the conversation in your head to ensure you said all the right things and laughed at all the right jokes. All this anxiety can be avoided, though, if you remember that most people have the positive first impression of who they met. Most people get so wrapped up in analyzing their own behavior that they don't think about the other person's point of view. They are so busy listening to their inner critic and worrying about that their anxiety was visible, that they spend more time judging themselves than seeing the conversation for what it was. If they take the time to step back and evaluate the conversation rationally, they will usually see that it went well and the other person was responding positively to them. People typically create positive first impressions on others after initial encounter. This is because they typically do not see any anxiety or discomfort a person may be experiencing during the conversation. They are usually focused only on the words and tone of the conversation, which, if positive, will leave a positive memory and impression. Thus, when someone is scared that they made a bad first impression, they can simply remind themselves that most people like others more than themselves. To seal the deal with a great impression, you can offer someone valuable, you can offer something valuable to the other person just before they leave. This can be a new piece of information, a networking opportunity, an invitation to another event, or simply a recognition of their insight. Sometimes, when ending a conversation, you can usually tell your conversation partner is still interested in learning more. So, leaving them with a bit of new information to consider can quench their desire and continue discussing, can quench their desire to continue discussing the topic at a later date. A networking opportunity can be incredibly exciting for people, especially budding professionals, and are all more special when they did. Man, shit. A networking opportunity can be incredibly exciting for people, especially budding professionals, and are all the more special when they do not need to be requested. Offering an introduction to someone in an industry or office can show that someone believes in the other person and is willing to vouch for their abilities. I was struggling that last sentence. That was chapter 10, ending the conversation. Chapter 11, the summary. This is the last chapter of the book. The last chapter of the book, man. I'll zoom through this one. I'll zoom through this one. Oop, oop, oop. Summary. Summary. Chapter 11. Summary. Let me see. 1, 2. Buckle my shoe. 1, 2, 3. All right. Summary. Interacting with others can be a daunting task for people with social anxiety. It may seem too difficult or scary a task to even approach at times. Many typical people, however, feel this way too when engaging socially with others. Those with social anxiety may have to put a little extra effort to start a conversation, but the skills discussed in this book are universal. Preparation. Before you can feel confident about starting a conversation, you should first attempt to assess your personality style. Understanding your own personality, temperament, and social needs can vastly affect the types of conversation you will feel comfortable in and how frequently you are engaged with others. Part of this understanding is realizing the negative effects loneliness can have and making efforts to counteract them. Connecting with others is a powerful tool and can combat loneliness while prompting empathy. Empathy is one of the best tools you can use when attempting to interact with others because it can help you understand and relate to them better. Excuse me. When deciphering how a conversation might play out, you should always remember that listening plays just as important a role as speaking. Using active listening techniques can demonstrate attentiveness and make the speaker feel valued and appreciated. Looking at people while they speak can also help you retain more information than if you are distracted during a conversation. The final bit of preparation you will need to start the conversation is to know how to inject yourself into an established group. If you can find a way to smoothly integrate into a group conversation, you can feel like the conversation master. Action. Action. Once you are prepared to start a conversation with someone, it is time for you to focus on their actions. Taking the environment and context of the conversation into account before making any moves is a great way to ensure you are respecting any boundaries or unspoken rules that may precede the interaction. After establishing the type of conversation you are going to engage in, you should continue to treat people courteously and respect any boundaries that are presented. You can laugh and keep conversations light so you and the participants stay open and interested. After getting the hang of speaking to others, you can begin to acknowledge how their appearance affects your perception of them. Appearance does matter, especially when forming a first impression of someone. Dressing for the occasion or to show confidence both takes practice, but they are all worth the effort in the end. Finally, knowing how to tactfully end the conversation is the piece to the resistance of any skilled conversationalist. After reading this book, I hope you feel confident about the process of facing your fears and having conversations with others. That was the end of the book. The Art of Conversation by Stephen Hawks. How to communicate effectively by refining your social skills. Another one down. Another one bites the dust. And another one. And another one. And another one bites the dust. That's 17 right there. That's 17 books down. Oh, don't do me like that. I almost bit the dust. All right, we're going to come back next time and start the next book on conversation and common communication. Conflict Resolution Playbook. Conflict Resolution Playbook. Practical communication skills for preventing, managing, and resolving conflict, man. By Jeremy Pollack. I don't know who he is, just like I don't know who, or didn't know, and don't know who Stephen Hawks was. But seemed like something to read. So we'll see if we can move through this book. This got a lot of stuff in it. This one look like it has a. This one looks like I might have to read a little slower for this book. It's a lot of I don't know what you want to call it. A lot of things I might have to point out. We'll see. Writerly advice. See things like this. things like this. It says the clearing task sequence. Name I feel because when I interpret it as a result, I don't trust that you. Hmm. What I need from you is, I've heard those things before in different places, especially around YouTube. But yeah, man, we'll see. We'll see how this one's gonna go. But I thought the communication one was good. To me, that sounds like a lot of common sense stuff. Common sense stuff. But I guess it's the time and the place. Some things are taught, some things aren't. Definitely good to assess, I guess. For sure. For sure. If there are any listeners that will be there, then I will. But it might just be you and me. But yeah, some of the questions, uh, definitely a good suggestion. Definitely a good suggestion. Let me see. Yeah, we'll go through this one. Yeah, well, we're moving along, man. Moving along. Yeah, you're a listener, man. You and me. If you catch me, had a good hour. Or if I catch you, had a good hour while I'm reading, and you can be on the live. Yeah, I'll definitely pose the questions. But if I don't really see anybody on there, I'll just read through them. I mean, I'll slow down. I'll read through them, and if people want to, post answers to some of the questions in the comments, hey, we could go from there, and maybe those can be discussed at a later date. We'll see. But we'll keep pushing, one book at a time, one book at a time. Still seeing what we can learn and grow from in these different books. I'm telling you, man, I'm still dreading reading this damn the love language book, man. I do not want to read this shit. Do not want to read this shit. But like some bad medicine, I'm gonna go ahead and read it. Oh Lord. I'm gonna go. So many reasons. I think it's bullshit. That's the main one. I think the book is bullshit. I don't want to read it. I want to take the medicine. But I'll get it out the way so I could have read it just to see what it is talking about. So when people are in conversations, to help have information for other conversations, you know, and I guess, reading will help solidify if I think it's bullshit or not. But I don't want to read it. I guess because it's like I think it's some girl shit. I think it's some girl stuff, man. The love languages. People talk about that shit. They don't even do that shit. They don't even believe in that stuff. That's why I think it's bullshit. You know, they might know it. Won't do none of that. Won't do none of them love languages. There's a lot of stuff people do a lot of. You know, I say they talk a lot about horoscopes, love languages. Boo. Don't live by them damn horoscopes for real. You should have known that you and that Taurus wasn't compatible. You know what But hey, it is what it is. I knock it out after, you know, we'll jump around. Man, you know, really trying to pump myself up. To read this damn book. You know. But you know, shit. Man, we'll get it in. We'll get it in. Now, so I mean, I asked you. I'm gonna ask y'all early to bear with me, man. Bear with me in that book. Bear with me, cause I might be one or two things gonna happen, man. I'm not gonna be able to separate my belief of it being bullshit, and it's gonna cause me to read it horribly, or I'm gonna fly through that shit because I don't want to read it. But anyway, you know, hey, I'm glad the ability to be able to think that I would even read quickly like that. You know, being able to finish that last book as quickly as we did in what I think five. I think this session number 5 for that book. So we'll see how many reading sessions we'll need to finish off the conflict resolution playbook, and then get to the humbug. Get to the humbug book. But I appreciate you chopping it up with me, spiritual conversationalist. As you see, you got a wrench. You're the first person to get a wrench. I don't know what the wrench do. I'm still learning, but you got one. We'll keep growing. But appreciate you for real. Appreciate you rocking with me all the time you have. We'll see how things keep going. We'll see how things keep going. So till next time, man. Till next time, and the next session, and the next book, Conflict Resolution Playbook. Till then, shalom. Shalom out.